My name is Poul Hestbaek. I'm the CEO of Folk Maritime, which is a newly established company here in Saudi Arabia. When you talk about regional trade, as a matter of fact, global trade, the unit cost perspective is very important. So you need to balance the unit cost and also the service coverage that you can create. And in doing that, it's often much better to team up with other similar lines in the same scope. And then once you team up with somebody, it's important that you have somebody who has the same philosophy towards business. And there we have found that both in the case of CMA-CGM, the cooperation that we are now entering at Asjet is also a cooperation of equals on the mindset. So we are very happy with it, but the driver of that and also the future cooperation with other shipping lines and perhaps even competitors, that is driven by getting this optimal unit cost that is so important for us. We're always very occupied by what is the right time to buy a ship. And one of my old mentors said, you will know 10 years later what was the right time, because it's very difficult with the right time. Now, if you talk about Jeddah, which the timing of that, one of the things that was important was to get a ship that was modern. It's only 1 year old, on the highest standard when it comes to sustainability and efficiency. But also what perhaps the most important thing was that it was readily available. We had to find a vessel that we could bring into service now because there was a demand and it was up to our strategy. But looking beyond that, and also I'm sure 10 years from now when I look back of was it a good deal, I'm sure I come to the conclusion it was a good deal because it fits us at the timing we needed it. I think the issue of friendshoring or nearshoring is a global trend that we are seeing. And the topic of around India is, of course, India is a powerhouse and it's a growing powerhouse when it comes to production of stuff that we need in either manufacturing, but also in consumptions. So that is the uniqueness, the size, and the growing capability of India is very important. But if we look in the areas, you also have capabilities in East Africa. You have a significant capability in Egypt that we see already Egypt as a big supplier, particularly on the foodstuff scene, but also on garments. It's also the scope of Folk to get into the eastern part of India and up to Bangladesh, where there is also a lot of garments that is being covered in the trade. So I think there is a number of them, but of course the locomotive is India. The profitability during the pandemic, that was like the profitability of the 1,000-year probability. So it came down from an extraordinary high profitability. The situation in the Red Sea is shifting the balance between supply and demand, which is so important for the price setting in shipping. It's still profitable. Will it come down because the supply and demand is going to shift again further towards oversupply? Yes, probably. That's going to happen. There's going to be a correction. But as I mentioned before, when we talked about partnership, in a global trade, but particularly in a regional trade where you're looking at very low margin business, there are two things that is critical. Number one is volume, scale. Number two is unit cost. And when we talk about unit cost, then we talk about physical, what is the cost of the space? That's important. But equally more important is that we utilize the space. So that's why when we partner up, then we partner up in order to get scale of the ships, because the bigger, there's lower unit cost, but you also partner up to make sure that you fully utilize that space. And by this combination, you have the lowest cost. Now, how is that going to protect us? It is so that in a shipping world where you have supply and demand driving price setting, then the price in a downturn will fall down to the best operator. but not below. And that's why you need to be the best operator. You need to have that slot cost. And that's why we are so rigidly looking at making sure we get in a constellation, if we can't provide it alone, that obtains that capacity. The Folk's business is a combination of regional shipments, and it's feedering of mainliner that passes through and dumps it at the hub, and we will then give them the last sea mile towards the port of destination. So of course that part of it, which we see over years, will become less and less, still significant, but it will definitely be less than half of our business. Of course there is a correction depending on shift of prepared transshipment terminal, but also what is the distribution, how they do it in this new constellation. So we will have to see. If you talk about the regional business, I believe that with the reconfiguration of services, there will be more bigger ships coming in to the region, particularly from Asia. There will be a split of strings so that Asia, India doesn't necessarily also include Middle East, and therefore that gives some opportunities for the regional carriers. So I think it's a mixed bag, but for us, we will adapt. That's our tonnage strategy, is built on the capability to adapt, and we will adapt to it. But we do not see a major impact with one or the other when it comes to the regional trade. It's an ability to network. I mean, we put up big stands, we do a lot of things, but at the end of the day, we have conferences and hopefully there are some sharing and information. But the most important one is to network, and you may get somebody who you in the first instance could not really see any partnership with, and then at the second choice you see, wow, there is actually some opportunities. So that is what a conference like this provides, a platform where we meet and exchange ideas. And that's why it is so powerful. In particular, this one, I'm surprised how powerful it has been with the number of people on the fair, on the stands, but also visiting. It has been a big success for us to be here, and it is our first year that we are here. So of course there has been perhaps a little bit extra interest in us, but there's been an interest and a traffic to our stand and to meet our people that we could not have gained elsewhere.